per year.
My name is David Lobb. I'm a professor at the University of Manitoba, and the focus of my research is soil erosion and soil conservation. And I was speaking today at the Top Crop Manager Summit on soils, dealing with the cost of soil erosion and the need to improve or restore our soils to increase the productivity and profitability of our agricultural systems. Soil is so important because it provides a number of functions ecologically. The one that farmers are most concerned about is the growing of crops. And without healthy soils, it's very difficult to grow crops. When you see soils that are degraded, you see dramatic yield losses. And I was showing in my presentation that we often see moderately to severely eroded soils where they have very little organic matter left. Those areas are suffering yield losses of 50 to 100% yield losses. And that is on enough area within fields and within regions that it has a significant adverse impact on the economics of farming at a farm scale, but also regional and industrial scale. Well, soil, through erosion processes, we've lost significant amounts of soil. Particularly, we've lost organic matter, which really integrates many of the things we think of as key properties in healthy soils, like moisture holding capacity, nutrient holding capacity, habitat for microbiologic life. And when we lose that, it has a dramatic impact on crop yield. And when we looked at the loss of soil on crop productivity and therefore profitability, and we tracked it over multiple years, over decades, we found that the loss in crop production has gone from about $1 billion per year back in the 1970s and into the 1980s, before we had a dramatic increase in conservation tillage and soil conservation practices. It's actually grown to about $3 billion a year in the 2010s, 2011 specifically in the presentation I gave. So the cost of lost soil has gone up dramatically. Now, it's gone up because there is continued soil loss in certain areas of the field, and those areas are now suffering quite dramatic losses in crop production. Because the soil loss relationship between crop production and soil loss is nonlinear. Most soils can tolerate a little bit of soil loss or soil organic matter loss without much yield loss. But once you start to lose the majority of what was there in the topsoil originally, you start to see dramatic yield losses. And that's what we found, that on the areas that are still subject to severe annual soil losses, those areas now are losing much, if not all, of their crop production. And that still has a very significant impact on the overall economics of crop production across Canada. Well, farmers should look at the concerns about soil loss and crop production and the increased cost of crop production over the years as a bit of a wake-up call, and maybe an affirmation of what some of them already know, that simply going to soil conservation practices like conservation tillage or zero-till specifically has done lots to reduce the soil loss that they were subjected to, but it hasn't necessarily repaired or restored the soil. So they still need to do something beyond going to conservation tillage to increase the organic matter, increase the biologic activity of those eroded parts of the landscape. And some of the options that farmers have, they certainly could go to improve crop practices, like including forages and rotation of cover crops. But that's still a very slow process to increase organic matter. Some farmers have opted to import manure, in other words, putting manure on those eroded areas to try and increase organic matter. But that's still a very long process to increase soil organic matter to the point where you start to see improvements in crop yield. And the one practice that I included in the presentation, which is meant to be fairly provocative, is the idea of moving the topsoil that's been eroded and accumulated at the bottom of the slope and put it back on the hilltops where it has come from, and use that to restore or regain productivity, and do it very immediately and very fully. And when you do that, you have a dramatic improvement in crop production and profitability. And we found that when we looked at the economic analysis of that practice alone, that practice paid for itself very rapidly, 3 to 5 years in our particular study. So that's probably the practice that has biggest bang for its buck. It's most immediate. It should have a very immediate impact on profitability of crop productions on farm.